Menopause, just to be clear, is part of the symptoms is the loss of estrogen.
So if we just clarify the timeline, so a woman's hormones are unlike men's. Men, once you're through puberty, your testosterone will stay pretty steady. Women, every month, as we go through our menstrual cycle, estrogen goes up and down. When these are average times, around 45, it can start early like 35, but around 45, we have used up enough eggs from our monthly cycle that we start to become low in our estrogen. And our body is trying to adjust to that. Our brain without estrogen gets brain fog. It has a lot of receptors and nothing to go in them, right? Once we have used up all of our eggs and we are 1 year from our last menstrual cycle, 366 days, that is the 1-day definition of menopause. And we live the rest of our 40 more years, we live postmenopause without estrogen unless we supplement. So in perimenopause in our 40s, that's why I say at 47, I thought I was going to die. As estrogen is going away, all these receptors that used to be filled with estrogen, which would then cause all these marvelous downstream effects, all the muscle protein synthesis, the bone laying down, the inflammation would be kept at bay, suddenly have no stimulus. So when we're talking about inflammation, estrogen is an anti-inflammatory effect. It prevents the release of tumor necrosis factor, which is a inflammatory cytokine. I think of it like a fire or, nuclear war or something, that chemicals in our body. So that gets out of control. And then estrogen is also really important interacting with a part of our immune system called the inflammasome. So without estrogen controlling inflammation, we can get something called arthralgia, which is your total body hurts for no reason. And this was one of my primary symptoms when I was 47. I went from being an athlete, active all the time, surgeon, I do hauling people's bodies around, to I could barely get out of bed. It took me a lot to crank out and get out of bed. My whole body hurt. There's nothing structurally wrong. It's due to the inflammation of loss of estrogen. Another very, very, very common inflammatory symptom of the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause is frozen shoulder. It's all over social media right now. It's where it is an inflammatory state. Men can get it, usually diabetic men. It just means that you're inflamed. So you'll present to my office with the story of, Doc, I did nothing. I didn't have an accident. I didn't hit my shoulder on the closet in the middle of the night when it was dark, but I woke up and my shoulder is killing me and I can't move it. It's literally like this. And that's because for some reason the shoulder is very sensitive. The capsule, the inside skin of the shoulder, very sensitive to inflammation. And so people show up like that. Frozen shoulder can take 2 years to get rid of. It's miserable. So that's inflammation.
Is that the whole hook your bra test?
Yes. I made this thing up. You can't hook your bra, right? Most women do this.
Yeah.
The first motion you lose in frozen shoulder is internal rotation, which is what this is.
Hooking your bra on.
Hooking your bra, you can't. Because what happens is the first thing that goes, you can't do this. Your arm's kind of stuck at your side. And then you can't lift it up. And you can't do your hair. So you're trying, you're doing all this trying to... Imagine not being able to move your arm. And when you did move your arm, it's excruciating.
Oh, it's painful as well.
Excruciating pain. Like women say to me, I'd rather give birth again than have this shoulder. So...
What's going on now? What's going on in the shoulder?
Yeah, there was a study done by Joe Hannafin, who is a mentor of mine at Hospital for Special Surgery, who looked at the stages of frozen shoulder. And first, it's just big inflammation. All the inflammatory cytokines go and inhabit I keep doing this. The shoulder has an inside skin that surrounds the bones called the capsule. It's like a thin sheet of paper, like cellophane. That gets inflamed, hot and red. That's painful. Over time, the inflammatory cells of the immune system that crawl into the capsule, the pain will go away, but it will cause a capsular shrinkage like this. It will actually contract. So your shoulder might not be as painful, but it still won't move. So that's why it's really critical that people come to doctors like me and we get it moving quickly. We do not want it to become socked in because it literally can take 2 years to defrost, all due to this inflammatory. We don't know why the capsule is so sensitive, but we know it is. So that's the inflammatory aspect of this. We know that without estrogen, we can lose 2 to 3% of our muscle mass, and rapidly during this period. We have estrogen is an anabolic steroid. It's made for muscle building through the mTOR system. And so without that, and we build less muscle, and our muscle stem cells, our satellite cells, become decreased by 30 to 60%. It's profound in a very short amount of time. We know about bone density. We talked about that. Estrogen's role in the bone is to control one of the cells called the osteoclast. If we talk about bone biology briefly, if we have that femur, imagine on one side of the cell, when you impact your bone, the biomechanical stimulus is converted to biochemical stimulus, and it says, hey, we need to build more bone. So the osteoclast crawls up the cell and starts digging out minerals to release to the body to do its function. What happens when you have estrogen is the osteoblast comes back up behind it and fills in that hole and builds bone. Estrogen helps control osteoclasts. The more I learn about bone biology after all these years, it seems to me that the osteoclast is a little bit of a rogue entity. It's going to go uncontrolled. It needs a lot of control with estrogen, testosterone. Without those controls, what happens in osteoporosis is you can still lay down bone. Your osteoblasts are still working, but it's out of control. You're breaking down more bone than you're building.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, inflammation, you have muscle, you have bone. Here's one. We talked about arthritis earlier. There are estrogen receptors on the cartilage. Estrogen sitting on the cartilage helps maintain this spongy matrix of cartilage that then protects your bones. Without estrogen, the cartilage matrix breaks down. So before 50, men have more traumatic arthritis than women. After 50, women can have a rapid progression of their arthritis. Pile on top of that the weight gain that happens to many women with the load we talked about, and it's a disaster. And so many women rapidly progress and need total joints, which, as an orthopedic surgeon, is not the end all, but we'd like to avoid it, right? So that's due to estrogen being missing from the cartilage. And then finally,
on that point, you talked about weight gain there in menopause. I read that you gained weight when you went through menopause.
I gained 30 pounds.
30 pounds. So that's equivalent to roughly 4 of these bricks if each brick weighs 7.5 pounds, which is a lot of weight to suddenly gain. And when we think about the impact that will have on your joints, based on what you said earlier.
Yeah. My pain was more an arthralgic pain, meaning total body pain. Although when I had that weight on, I had pain underneath my kneecaps going up and down stairs because of the extra pressure of my kneecaps on my femurs. So, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, that's something that I don't think I'd never really considered. I never considered how the impact on our joints of weight gain, period. But then also when you go through menopause, weight gain is something that I've heard about over and over and over and over again because of the loss of estrogen, and how that will then have a skeletal impact on a variety of different areas of your body.
But then imagine this perfect storm, right? You don't feel like yourself. You're tired. Your joints hurt. Maybe your whole body hurts. You're losing your muscle, so that causes more impact. There's no shock absorption. You're losing your bone, and without even realizing what's happening, because it creeps up on you, right? And you're so busy. I mean, all the excuses are so busy. Women very rapidly find themselves at 60, and they have, there's a syndrome called OSO, osteoporotic, meaning bad bones. We talked about that. Sarcobesity, loss of bone, loss of muscle, gain of fat. You've got all three things. And the morbidity and mortality of being osteosarcobesity is 3 times what it would be if you had one alone. So it creeps up on you, and you can see how none of these tissues are separate from each other. It just becomes this horrible storm, and women are like, what happened to me?